I always kind of got the idea that Zoe kind of prided herself as like a weight neutral person. Sometimes I kind of question how far does that go? More controversy today because we're going to talk about fat acceptance, body positivity, and ZoeUnlimited talking about fat influencers passing away. I do this because I'm quoting her video title. And it's going to be a bit of a spicy one, but I figure it is actually a conversation that's quite relevant to talk about. And I know linking this to ZoeUnlimited when people have obviously expressed concerns about her outlook, her approach, and her arguably relationship with food would probably be quite a good way of going about it because I get to discuss a few things. If you're new here or haven't already, please do consider clicking the subscribe button down below, as I would very much appreciate it.
Healthy beauty does not come at every size, and certainly not at a lot of the socially noble, body positive plus sizes. Yet it is absolutely not wholesome to point that out.
The wholesome to point that out thing is actually quite interesting because I saw quite a viral TikTok actually. I've seen it pop up quite a few times, which stated, I think I've mentioned this before, someone claimed that if you train and work out for aesthetic based reasons, i.e. you want to look a certain way, by default you are fatphobic. And I wholeheartedly disagree with that statement. I train for aesthetic based reasons. I like to think I'm not fatphobic, and quite frankly I train not for my health, to be honest. I actually just train because I like the look I'm trying to achieve. I'm not happy with the look I have now, granted, but the look I'm trying to achieve of like a bodybuilder physique, we'll say, is something that I myself would want to look like, and that of all the things I would like to look like, I'd like to look like 50 different physiques, but the physique in mind as number one, as the one I would most like to look like, is a bodybuilder. Not saying I wouldn't like to look like other physiques or wouldn't be happy with other physiques, but that's just the one that is a priority for me. So just because you don't want to look a certain way or don't want to put that shape, physique, desires, belief, whatever it may be, onto yourself does not mean you are phobic of it, does not mean you are fat phobic, does not mean you're any other phobic, whatever it may be. It simply means, or it can simply mean, I should say, you just want to look a way that you want to look like for you. Inherently, if you're training for aesthetic-based reasons and that's now problematic, could you not argue the other way that actually if you're training for aesthetic-based reasons, let's say I don't want to look skinny, am I not skinny phobic? Is that not another phobic of another kind because I'm trying to avoid another body type? Can you make an argument for anything? And sometimes is that actually just an argument for the sake of arguing? I'm not saying fat phobia doesn't exist, absolutely not, but I'm just saying when you kind of put the label of if you do this you are this, a blanket statement like that is always going to be a problem in my eyes, because again it's a you might be but you also might not be.
Overly restrictive beauty with models who are only Kate Moss level heroine chic is also problematic because again, it is not healthy. But as much as many wish, the spectrum of healthy does not stretch over to obesity.
This kind of comes into the health at every size argument, and this is a tricky one. This is one that's probably going to upset a few people. When you look at myself, I'm relatively lean, I have visible abs, but I weigh about 110 kilos, near enough, and quite frankly, I'm probably not healthy, let's be honest. I don't train for health, I train for aesthetic-based reasons, and also performance to an extent. Some of the health markers I check regularly aren't particularly great, but you might look at me and assume they would be. You might look at somebody who may have a lot more body fat than myself, who might not look as healthy as I am, but their blood markers might actually show another story, might actually indicate they could be healthier. To an extent, yes, you can be healthier many sizes, but you might not be able to be healthy at every size. I think there is a point where if you are anorexic, perhaps, your blood markers and your health is, fair to say, probably going to be in question. If you are morbidly obese and your body fat percentage is way beyond what we might deem to be healthy, depending on how you argue that, your blood markers and your health might also be in question. Flip around, you could be at a healthy body fat like myself, and my blood markers and my health is in question. So I think you can be healthy at many sizes, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can be healthy at every size because you've got extremes to consider. Well, I always used to disagree with BMI, and to an extent I do, but also from a health perspective, I kind of am starting to align with it, because inherently when you are heavier, despite whether it's muscle tissue, so contractile tissue, fat tissue, whatever it may be, when you weigh more or maybe even weigh less, or you don't have enough muscle, don't have enough fat, that can inherently have problems. And that doesn't necessarily just come down to body fat percentage and whatnot. It can actually come down to weight, because if you are heavier, your body's going to have to be working harder. Like I said, weigh about 110 kilos, I'm 6'3", and my body's probably going to have to be working fairly hard to pump blood around it and to function as anybody would. And my weight could be an indicator of my health risk because of that. And whether it's muscle mass or fat mass, they can still contribute to potential health concerns due to just how much you might weigh. And again, being relatively heavy, I could be subject to potential risk of certain diseases and problems simply due to my weight, regardless of whether that's coming from muscle mass or fat mass. Take everything with a pinch of salt, and it's never a definitive yes, no, XYZ. It's a maybe or this might.
I lost 60 pounds in 6 months. Everyone was so happy for me. I hated myself. I hated the way I looked. I hated why I exercised.
So this is an interesting one because this essentially comes down to desires and preferences. Just because you look a certain way that others might be proud of you for achieving, or others might wish for you, doesn't mean it is for you. Doesn't mean you should look that way. If you get very muscular and others are very impressed by it, but you hate yourself, who are you trying to please? Are you doing this for yourself or are you doing this for other people? Then you've got to question your motives. I think it's more important to focus on pleasing yourself, especially when it comes to your body, because it is your choice, rather than trying to please others. If you maybe lose loads of weight and you aren't very happy with yourself because you maybe don't feel as confident, whatever it may be, you don't have to lose that weight if you don't want to. It's all well and good me saying, oh, this is healthy, this is not healthy, this might be healthy, this might not be healthy. But also, what makes you happy? Again, I'm not saying disregard health, I'm not saying discount health. What I'm saying is, health is one thing to consider, happiness is another thing to consider. Although your physical health may be fantastic, if your mental health is in the bin, is there a trade-off there that maybe you could find a steady medium? Because mental health is still something you need to consider. And our appearance can contribute to our mental health. So if you lose loads of weight and you aren't very happy with yourself and your mental health declines because of that, although physically you might be more healthy, are you actually healthier though? Especially if you're struggling with your body image, your sense of self, and maybe even other things such as depression and anxiety, maybe due to weight loss or even weight gain. But at the end of the day, it is your body, your choice, and your happiness as well. Don't forget, link down below in the description, you've got the link to apply to work with myself, Ryder or Beth on a one-to-one coaching basis. You've got the link to the TFNL group coaching, and you've got the link to the TFNL workout guides if any of those things tickle your pickle.
So much of the fat acceptance movement is actually a brainwashing ad for addictive junk food. And yes, excuse my language, for it is now politically incorrect to call food good or bad.
How do you define a good or bad food? Too much of anything could arguably be bad. Again, I don't like labeling things as good or bad, because again, it within reason and within moderation. You eat a shed load of broccoli and nothing else, something that people deem to be a superfood that must be really good for you, you're going to lack a lot of fundamental macronutrients you need to survive. So is it now bad because you've had too much? And again, I think satisfying cravings and enjoying food a bit, where you maybe are having a McDonald's here and there and are actually just enjoying the food you're eating and actually just having a healthy relationship with food, although people would label that as bad food, is it actually bad if it's actually enhancing your relationship with food and give you a bit more food freedom? Depends on what you're trying to achieve, what your perspective is, and what your goals are.
Sadly, the profit-driven version of the fat acceptance movement targets women way more. Why do we see a range of plus-size models from mannequins in retail to Victoria's Secret fashion shows, while men's fashion still shows buff and toned models and plastic mannequins?
That's actually a fair observation and an interesting one at that, because it's true. I think a lot of times men, when they're on the kind of the catwalk and are in the fashion industry, they do often promote skinny, being very slim, being very light, being very like I guess defined around the jaw and whatnot. But with women, there's a bit more of a range there. It does make you ponder and make you wonder, why don't they push it onto men as well? And I don't have an answer for that. I can theorize so many different things, but again, I simply don't have an answer for that. I'd actually be curious to know what you think the reason is. Like, why do you think that there is more of a spectrum of desired body types when it comes to fashion for women than there is for men? I think obviously every gender will face pressures, societal pressures regarding aesthetics, body and whatnot that are simply frequently changing, but it really does come down to what actually makes you happy. Again, when I go through social media, I get bombarded with these, oh, you gotta look like this, women don't like this, women like this, but if you look like this, women won't like you, but XYZ. I'm just like, wow, what a stress it is to try and navigate the world of pressures. I can only imagine other genders must have problems similar to that as well. I fully encourage self-appreciation and self-love, 100%. But I don't encourage poor health. Am I healthy? Probably not, let's be honest. Do I encourage you to be unhealthy like me? Absolutely not. Do I understand the risks associated with what I'm trying to achieve? Absolutely. But I've said to myself, for my happiness, I'm willing to sacrifice X amount of my health. Not all of my health. I'm willing to trade this much health for this much happiness, to find that steady balance that I'm okay with. And at the end of the day, it is my body, it is my choice, and you have the same right too. And when it comes to health at every size, when does size start contributing to health? And when does size potentially start dictating health, as it could happen at either end of the spectrum. It could happen in the middle of the spectrum. I don't know for certain, but I'd arguably say I don't think we can tell for certain. And although I appreciate this video from Zoe, I do actually think it was a fair video. I don't agree with everything she said, but I thought it raised a lot of interesting points that made me ponder, especially when it came to the corporate side of things that I hadn't thought about before. I always kind of got the idea that Zoe kind of prided herself as like a weight neutral person. Sometimes I kind of question how far does that go? Is that weight neutral to a point? Again, I'm not saying I didn't necessarily disagree with what she's saying. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with what she's saying. I get a lot of conflicting messages from Zoe, and I've raised this before, that she'll say XYZ but then promote this video despite saying, don't be skinny, let's teach you how to lose loads of weight in a week, versus look how you want to look, but if you're fat, you're this. I do understand where people are coming from when they say they feel like there's a lot of conflicting information presented by Zoe. I'm definitely curious, and it has got me pondering too. As with all my videos, this is just my opinion, and I will always say you've got to do what's best for you, because it's your body, your goals, and your choice, not mine. Thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for tolerating the fact I'm probably not as healthy as you thought I might be. And thank you for tolerating the video.